What's going on, Sumolings? It's Chris here from AppSumo. Super excited to get started today. Thank you guys for joining us on this Friday morning. Give you guys a second to trickle in. What's going on, everybody? All right, so today we have an awesome webinar. We have Will from Startups.com, and Startups.com is the ultimate resource for interactive resources, community, and tools to help you successfully launch your startup fast. It's a great tool. This is not the first time we've been running it on AppSumo, so we're really excited to have it back. Before we get diving in today, I do want to go over two pieces of housekeeping. One, we will be sending out a replay later today, so if you miss anything or you have to pop out early, we'll get you taken care of there. Next piece, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A box below the video, and then we'll circle back and get you some answers there. But without further ado, Will, thank you for joining this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So where did the idea for Startups.com come from, and what's your background? How did this all get started?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur and a founder for 25 years. Being a startup founder is literally all I've ever done. So having gone through the journey, I've started 9 companies. And what I've learned in starting all those companies and working with lots of fellow founders along the way is that none of us really know what we're doing. And so when I started Startups.com, my goal was to give people kind of a bit of a hand-holding journey through each of the steps. So everything from I just had the idea 9 seconds ago, all the way through to this thing is launched, it's running, and I need to get some funding. And all we did was take every step of the journey and look for a solution to help people where they get stuck. So at the beginning, when people are like, hey, I don't know anything about startups, again, I'm sitting in my cubicle and I don't know what to do. We said, let's get education out there. Let's teach people how to do some idea validation, et cetera. And there's tons of that on the site. Mm-hmm. Then from there, once they have the idea kind of in a more usable form, we then said, let's get them a place where they can put a business plan together, figure out how to do projections and financials and go to market and all that good stuff. So we built that product. And then we looked at what are all the places that they're going to get stuck next in customer acquisition, in funding. And so we built tools like Fundable or LaunchRock, which is what we acquired. But we also built tons of education. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of videos on the site. There are thousands of pages of content on every topic around starting you could possibly imagine. And we'll go through all this. But all of this comes from a lot of my personal experience in both starting my own companies for 25 years, but working with thousands of founders. And while all of our journeys feel a little bit different, we all get stuck in the same places. So Startups.com was just a really threaded way to walk you through the startup process and give you a ton of help at every place you get stuck.
That's awesome. That's great. So in terms of who should be using Startups.com, is it mostly for founders? I know you said like anyone who's still sitting in a cubicle with an idea on a napkin to somebody who's looking to raise like a seed round, things like that. Would it also make sense for people that are like, maybe they're not starting a company, but they're in marketing at a startup and they want to learn how to like increase customer acquisition or something like that?
Yeah, totally. Look, we've got 3 stages that people go through on our site. The first stage is pre-launch, and that's where you're sitting in a cubicle or you're thinking about your MVP and you haven't done anything yet, but again, you're thinking about it. And we've got a ton of tools, like I said, to help you figure out how to move forward in the most efficient way possible. The next is when you actually get to what we call this launch stage, where you're just getting the product out there for the first time. It's the first time anybody's going to see the MVP. At that point, we're helping you do customer acquisition. We're connecting you with our 20,000 experts that are on the site that can give you real like hands-on guidance to anything you could want. And then the last is kind of the growth stage, where you've already got the product out there, you're making a little bit of revenue, but maybe now it's time to start to raise some serious capital. So we've got something like Fundable on the platform that has helped people raise over 500 million in startup capital. So as you go through these phases, we're super helpful. And then the folks that are engaging, some of them are founders, a lot of them are founders, but some of the folks coming on are people who are on the founding team as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's great. Okay. Well, so today, Simulings, we're going to do something a little bit different. Because of the way the Startups.com platform is, we got a video to walk through all of this stuff. So I'm going to cue that up for you guys now. You guys let me know if you're able to see it. And then we're going to circle back for questions at the end. And again, you can drop those in the Q&A box below the video. So let me get this pulled up. And Will, are you able to see this?
I see the play button.
Okay,
and
you got it.
Let's do this.
Hey everyone.
Coming through clear?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Will
Here we
Schroeder,
go.
the founder and CEO of Startupcom, and I'd like to walk you through all of the great stuff that we have to offer on our platform. Our goal here at Startups is to help founders through each of the critical steps of starting a business, from developing your idea to finding your first customers to raising capital from investors. First off, we offer ridiculously comprehensive education in the form of step-by-step guides, masterclass videos, and curated how-to lessons. I'll dig into all of that in a minute. Next, we have a massive community of 20,000 startup experts who can answer any question you could possibly have. Last, of course, we've got our well-known software products like Fundable, LaunchRock, and BizPlan that give you the tools you need to raise money, find customers, and put the perfect plan together. All right, so I'd mentioned we'd dig into our educational component, and honestly, it's massive, so I'll just try to give you the 50,000-foot version. All of our education is divided across 9 categories, representing every part of building a startup. We begin with formative stuff like idea validation and forming a startup, and then progress into more complicated topics like finding funding and startup finance. Each track has a collection of the best content. So for example, one of our most popular tracks is finding funding. Here you'll find a playbook, which is a step-by-step guide to working through that specific goal. These playbooks, they're incredibly detailed. The goal was to replicate what it would be like if we were a virtual co-founder and could just walk you through every challenge you face. For example, when you wanted to send a pitch to an investor and everyone screws this up the first time, we guide you line by line exactly what to say in your first email so that you get maximum results from each of your pitches. But the playbooks, they're just really one facet. We also have hundreds of masterclass videos from the most recognized names in building startups. From people like Steve Blank, who's the guru of customer validation, or Neil Patel, who's one of the most recognized names in marketing today. Each of these videos are broken up so you can quickly jump to which areas you need help with the most. And there's over 600 in total, so you've got plenty to draw from. And this is just a quick overview of the content. This can serve as one of the best hand-curated, no BS libraries of startup help you could possibly need. But in the interest of not turning this explainer into a documentary, let me move on to our next category, which is community. You see, we found that while having content is great, the reality is we all wind up looking for really smart people who can answer specific questions, and sometimes it just helps to talk to people who've gone through the same journey to really get their take. For that, we've developed our expert community. Here we've got over 20,000 experts, all of whom have signed up specifically to help out and who are willing to talk directly to you. We have experts ranging from startup lawyers to SEO gurus to pitch deck specialists, most of whom are founders themselves, so they really understand what you're going through. You can ask any question you want right here in our Q&A forums, and you can expect really high quality answers back. What's really cool though is that each of our experts can be booked for a phone call directly. Now, for that, many of them charge a fee directly to take a call, so that's not part of this subscription. We have to let them charge whatever they want to, but you can book and coordinate the call all on our site. We even have a new feature called Startup Therapy, which is our podcast that me and my co-host Ryan publish every week, where we dig deep into the really hard stuff that we all go through personally, like how to manage startup anxiety or how to have tough conversations with your spouse. And this is actually free. I'm just really hoping you'll listen anyway. All right, so the last component of what we do is our products, and this is something we're super proud of because our products have helped over 1 million startups like you just get stuff done. I'd like to start with BizPlan, our online business planning tool, which walks you through the entire business planning process. Let me show you just two things that I think you're going to really enjoy about BizPlan. The first, it's our guided builder. Here we break down each component of a business plan and allow you to tackle each one individually so you can really focus on particular challenges. The builder is super flexible too, so you can add sections easily, including charts, reports, or detailed areas like market sizes. But what a lot of people love is that we cover the financials, which, let's face it, are a challenge for everyone. Our financial forecasting tool takes simple inputs and then automatically does the math to build your revenue forecasts. You can then see how to create entire reports like balance sheets, income statements, and even a break-even analysis. We then offer sharing and collaboration tools for everything that you work on. So that's BizPlan. We also offer LaunchRock, which I think a lot of the people in the startup community have been familiar with for a long time. We actually launched our own company there years ago, and so have a lot of famous brands. LaunchRock allows you to create a simple early sign-up page for attracting your first customers well before you even launch. To date, our startups have acquired nearly 23 million customers using our tool because it's just simple and effective. The process is easy. You start by choosing a template for your startup so that you can create a page your early customers can find. From there, you begin editing the page so that it fits your brand and lets your early customers know why they should sign up. Customers simply add an email address to be notified when you launch. That way you'll get a good, strong, early population of customers so you can launch with momentum. It's super easy and effective, which is why I think LaunchRock has been so popular. Last, we've got Fundable, which everyone asks about because, hey, everyone needs capital. Fundable is our fundraising platform that's helped startups raise over $500 million in funding commitments. Fundable has two components. First, startups create a funding profile, which is similar to a pitch deck, where you can highlight how awesome your startup is, how much capital you're looking to raise, and how many commitments you've gathered so far. Once your profile is up and running, it becomes a bit of a 1-2 punch of allowing your existing investors to find and contact you, as well as pointing your own outreach toward your Fundable profile to generate interest. We funded companies in pretty much every industry, so we've seen it work very well. But we always caution that fundraising is hard, and just because you're using a platform doesn't mean it'll be easier, but we try to make a difficult process far easier to understand and be successful with, and I think we've done a pretty good job considering the outcomes. So this is pretty cool. Not only do you get all of the products that we have today, you also get all of the products we launch in the future too. For example, we just launched a new benefits marketplace where all of our brand name vendors like Amazon, AWS, WeWork, HubSpot, and other folks provide these deep discounts on all their products. So even for folks who bought a subscription, say 2 years ago, they could take advantage of the $5,000 discount that AWS is providing today. So that's all of what we have at Startups.com. It's a lot to cover, but we also think it's a ton of value to help startups at really any stage. But really, the best part of this is, with your Startups Unlimited subscription, you get all of it. You get all of our content, the courses, the videos, you get access to our entire community of 20,000 experts, you get all of our products like BizPlan, LaunchRock, Fundable, and even now our benefits product, all without limits. So please join me and over 1 million startups just like you as we build together and create something awesome at Startups.com.
All right. That's great.
There was absolutely no way I was going to cover all of that.
yeah. There's a lot to go over. There's so much in there. Yeah, you go through all the startup stuff, and then on top of that, the 3 other tools and the marketplace. That would be tough to do a full walkthrough on. But yeah, that's a super cool video. So I think the biggest question is, where do people start? Like we're saying, there's a lot going on. How does somebody, when they're diving in, get the most value right away when they sign up for Startups.com?
Sure. So I think people are typically going into one of 4 kind of destinations, if you will, either education, BizPlan, the business planning product, Fundable for funding, or LaunchRock for getting early customers. Here's how I would say it. If you're just starting out, if you're just starting to get your idea together, etc., I would stick with the content and really the community. We've got 20,000 experts on there, and they will answer any question you could possibly have. You can hop into the forums and you can ask detailed questions, and you can expect a lot of detailed responses. Like I said in the video, everybody on there is a founder, so they really enjoy helping founders. A lot of us go it alone, and that concerns me. You know, we have this idea of what a startup should be. We watched Shark Tank last night, so we've got an idea how investors must work. And like, you know, again, all of our ideas, how we think it works or what we heard, are typically all wrong. So what we try to get people to do is hop into the education on the site, hop into the forums, start asking questions, and start to get real answers. All of the content was written and designed for people that are doing it for the first time. You know, we didn't say, here's how to raise your Series B from a venture capitalist. We're assuming by the time you're doing that, you don't need us anymore. You know, you're well on your way. So we're looking for folks that are probably first timers in a lot of cases with the content, and really need some hand-holding, which all of us do. So that's one group of folks. The next group of folks are, like I said, they're pre-launch to launch, and they're trying to ramp up a bit. In that case, I would say LaunchRock is pretty much where everybody launches their companies as far as getting their early customers. There's hundreds of thousands of companies, including ours, that have launched on the product. So I would definitely start there. At which point you're getting some traction, you want to look toward investors, you know, then I would look at Fundable. And one of the things I said in the video was funding's hard, right? There are a lot of people that want funding. There are very few investors that have funding. And so it's a heck of a tough thing to get through. What we try to do on Fundable is we try to walk you through the process, and we try to kind of give you some guardrails as to what to do and what not to do. And so I think that helps a lot of people understand the process, because again, a lot of people guess. The last piece, which kind of covers almost all stages, is biz plan. And with biz plan, people think about writing a business plan just before you launch, and lots of people do, and that's cool. But what we find in biz plan, a lot of people use it to collect their thoughts along the way. So here was our initial idea, and we put some stuff into biz plan, and it helped us kind of collect our thoughts. Then we made a little bit of progress. We go back to it, and we refine our go-to-market strategy, our funding plan, et cetera. Then we're a little bit further along, and now we're really relying on the financials to do forecasting and kind of more of our day-to-day thought process around the finances. So with each of the products, I think people are using them at different stages, but collectively, they're going to be super useful through the whole journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what's really interesting. I mean, was this built in stages? Did like Startups.com come first and then BizPlan and then down the line? How did you kind of start and then grow it that way?
Sure.
You really do cover that whole startup journey.
It was nothing like it looks like now. I would love to, like, you know, I would love to revise history and tell you that we had this, you know, grand vision in 7 years ago, and we just built it exactly. It's like, it's so funny because it's all we talk about at startups, you know, on our podcast, Startup Therapy and everything else like that, that this thing is just a bunch of figuring out as you go. Here's how we did it. We started off, we had built BizPlan like 10 years ago, but it didn't get a ton of use at the time. To be honest, at the time, it wasn't that great of a product. But we're just starting to understand how to help entrepreneurs online. A few years later, we launched Fundable. And Fundable was launched right when the Jobs Act, which would allow people to raise money online, raise equity capital online, was just about to get approved. So we were like in the right place at the right time, maybe. We'll find out later we sort of weren't. This is when Kickstarter was taking off, Indiegogo was taking off on the rewards side. Everybody and their brother was launching on the equity funding side. And we thought, man, this is going to be a huge business. Well, it turns out that moving equity to be raised online is great. It's more efficient, but it doesn't necessarily change the amount of money that's available. The people that are investing still have the same amount of money, whether you raise online or offline. And so what we also learned in that process, and this is us listening to our customer, was that most people wanted to raise money, but they weren't ready to raise money. And so we listened closely and said, well, where are they stuck? And they didn't have a business plan. They didn't have any other customers. They didn't have any education. And we're like, you know, the problem isn't that they can't use Fundable. The problem is they don't know how to start a company to begin with. And so we just started to build this map, you know, where we said, what's every place that Chris is going to get stuck? And we said, okay, he's sitting in his cubicle. He's got this idea. He's got to validate that idea. How is he going to do that? Well, he's going to need a little bit of direction. So we built an idea validation course. Then we're like, well, once he figures that out, he's going to need to put this into some sort of plan to figure out how to get started. So we bought a new company that essentially replaced BizPlan, which, if I recall, was one of the biggest sellers on AppSumo of all time. I think it was a top 10, which was awesome.
Yeah, crushed.
Yeah, and so we just kept going down the line. We looked for every place that you were going to get stuck, and we either bought or built a product that fit. On the bought side, some people know this, some people don't. We bought 6 venture-funded companies. And so some of those, like LaunchRock, some of those like Clarity.fm, are actually all part of the platform. But those are products that have had millions upon millions of dollars invested in those and built a huge audience before they became part of our offer.
That's amazing. That's great. Okay, so let's go back 25 years when you're getting started. What resources were available then, and it seems like this was kind of built with that idea of like, this is what I would have liked when I was getting started. Like, what was your journey like as you were getting going?
To say my journey was terrible would be an understatement. I've got to paint this picture for you because it's absurd now. That's how bad it was. So, 25 years ago, I'm 19 years old, and I'm a student at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm a theater major. I have no business experience whatsoever. But it just so happened that 10 years prior, I had started using what was called a bulletin board system at the time, which was your computer calls somebody else's computer like a fax machine, and they talk to each other. It was like the long precursor before websites. Mm-hmm. So it just so happened that 93, 94, when the web and what we know now as the internet comes around, I'm one of very few people on the planet that understands how to build this stuff, which is a total fluke because I had no interest in building any of this or being in business whatsoever. So I ended up kind of getting in early and building one of the first web design companies just so I could pay my bills in college. It wasn't like, I was looking to start something big. And when I first started, this is again in 94, there were no resources. You couldn't Google anything because it hadn't been invented yet. You couldn't get online because that sort of hadn't been invented yet. If you didn't know something, you just didn't know it. There's no resources at all.
It's a crazy concept to think of.
It really is. And so like when I would go into clients and pitch our business, this web design company, again, it was called Blue Diesel. It was one of the first web design companies. I wasn't pitching them on, you need a website necessarily. I was explaining to them what the internet was. I was like, there's this new thing called the internet and you're going to want to be on it. And I'd sit across from CEOs, bringing my computer into their desk or their office on their desk because they didn't have one. It was amazing. And I'm showing them what a hyperlink is. And like their mind's blown. Like, wait a minute, this information isn't here. I'm like, yes, sir. And you click on this link, you're going to a page that's somewhere else on a server. Like, what's a server? I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be a long road. When I went to my guidance counselor at Ohio State and I said, hey, I'm looking to drop out. I was so excited. I'm looking to drop out and start an internet company. Her only question, what's the internet? I mean, it was amazing. There was a time, right? And so at that time, I had no resources whatsoever. I just figured stuff out as I went and I did it all wrong. Every decision I made, every intuition I had was 100% wrong. And so now I think about it where if you're starting a company, there's a million resources. You actually have a bigger problem now. You're trying to figure out which one to pay attention to. And that's part of what we wanted to do. We wanted to create a really well-curated system so when people come on and they say, hey, I need to acquire customers, they know that we've written something exhaustive about that. And if they say, cool, I like the way they do things, I want to raise money, we've written something even more exhausting about that. And so they can kind of go through videos and content and feel like they're getting a serious, like almost like the perfect advisor of their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you touched on something really important where, nowadays it's not knowing what to do, but feeling like you've read 10 different blog posts and they're all telling you to do a different thing. And you can use Startupcom as that kind of guidepost for where to go. And then if you're still stuck, you can use I guess it's Clarity FM that's now built into the platform.
Yes.
Where if you want somebody to go through your specifics, because everybody has that feeling of like, no, this product is unique or my questions are special to this market or whatever it is. And you just want somebody to be like, yes, you're on the right path, or no, try this instead. Check out this resource. I think that, that's a really important piece.
I think a lot of the folks that are on Clarity, I think I mentioned this in the video, but they're all founders. Also interesting to note, again, you can ask questions for free in the forums. There's been over 17,000 questions answered on there. But you can also get folks on the phone, which is actually unusual in this day and age of the internet. There's an expert on the phone every 60 to 90 seconds with a new founder, 24/7, 365. So people use it like crazy. But what's interesting is, although the experts charge for their time, most of them actually donate the proceeds to charity. They're not there to make money on your, on you. They just want to make sure that when people get them on the phone, they're conscious of their time, right? And so if I know the meter is running, I'm going to get to the point. And for a lot of these experts that are in high demand, it's a godsend. A lot of them use it for just that reason. But the focal point is to make sure that wherever you are in the world, you get access to the top people, right? So if you're in a region of the world that doesn't have access to great SEO experts or people who understand funding or pitch deck experts, that you now have access to that anywhere. You don't have to just be in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you're saying, that community aspect is so important, because if you are sitting in a cubicle, you want to start a startup. It's not that you don't know what to do, but nobody around you knows what to do. And they're all kind of on this one track that you're trying to get off of. And so having this to be able to tap into and be like, am I crazy? How do I do this? How do I figure it out?
And, sometimes am I crazy? The answer is yes, and not in a cool Steve Jobs way, right? Sometimes what you're trying to do is just the wrong approach. And the best use of your time, and by way that the advisors, is to tell you you're probably going down the wrong path. I do it with founders all the time. I say, look, I love what you want to do, but you're trying to do something too big. If people say, hey, I want to build the next Facebook, that's cool. But let me tell you how to build something really small that you can start with that can become the next Facebook, incidentally, like Facebook did. And so the amount of domain knowledge is incredible, but the amount of personal experience that's on the platform, both in the videos we create and in the content we create, but also in the people that are part of the community, is kind of unparalleled. So the folks that are getting on there, they've got access to this whole system forever. I mean, it's there's a lot of value there, but there's a lot to learn. And I think that's the important part.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's go into a couple of the questions that we have pop up.
Sure.
So one of them is, how does the material in startups get updated, or does it go out of date after a certain period of time?
That's a great question. We spent a lot of time thinking about that. So it does get updated over time. Some of it, again, when we see something gets outdated, like this isn't the latest, SEM practice or something like that, we do have to go back and update it. So we're constantly updating all of the content. What's interesting though is when we write the content, we're not writing it for, you have to be a Silicon Valley Series A funded, mega growth unicorn startup. While that's wonderful, 99.9% of our customers aren't that. So we're not trying to write about, how do you negotiate a term sheet between Sequoia Capital and Kleiner Perkins? It's like, if that's your problem, we're probably not, we're not the best answer for you. And I hope that's your problem. Short of that, we think about people that are building all types of businesses, whether they're building a retail business, they're building a services business, they're building a business that's just going to be them and a partner. We don't care about how big the business is. We care about that you can make it to the next milestone. So it's important to note, while the content is updated, it's also got a wide aperture for who we're writing to.
Yeah. And what does the Startups.com team look like? Is it distributed? Are different people writing this? Is it a core team that's putting all of this material together?
This is going to sound a bit funny. So we've got 200 people that are employees at Startups.com. We're very distributed all around the country, mostly in the US. I think it's like 98% in the US. Only 25 of us are in Columbus, Ohio, which is essentially our headquarters, and everybody else is distributed and remote. Whole discussion we can have around that. As far as where the content comes from, a fair amount of it comes from the people who are authoring it, like in those videos. So if you get Steve Blank, it's Steve's content. If you get Neil Patel, obviously it's his content, and there's a lot of it. A lot of it's written by me. If you really dig in, you're going to see that I've written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of content that all across the site. And that's me not just writing from my own experience, but having worked with thousands of other founders over the last 25 years, starting to figure out where's the commonality. So when I'm writing this stuff about how to get funding, how to acquire your customers, some of it's stuff that I've used successfully, but a lot of it's me just stealing from other people saying, man, a good friend of mine used this incredibly successfully. I'm going to tell you about what they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Next question. How do the AWS credits work? I know that's something we were talking about a bit earlier.
Well, let me back up and say what they're intended for. So when we connected with AWS, and Amazon's been awesome. We said, look, we've got 1.2 million people on our platform. A lot of them are going to be potential AWS users. And they said, that's incredible. We'd love to be able to give them all access. However, what we're looking for are new activations. So the $5,000 credit is really intended for new activations, not for we've been using this for 5 years and we just want a $5,000 credit. And so I saw a little bit of that in the comments where people are like, can I stack credits? Can I buy a few of them, et cetera? And I just want to say that's really not what it's intended for. However, if you're not an AWS customer and you're intending on becoming one now or in the future, it's a great deal. I mean, it's an insane deal. But as far as the expiration of the credits, AWS hasn't told us that there's any expiration on the credits or the program, but they run programs. This is a promotional campaign like everything else that they've done. So at some point, if they say, hey, this isn't working for us, they could pull the program, at which point the credits will likely expire.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. All right. Are there text transcripts for the video lessons?
There are not. It's odd. There used to be. We actually have an entire database of all of them. But when we launched the new site earlier this year, we just didn't pull them over. So they're not on there now, but we actually have it in the game plan to get them back on there. We already have them done. They got pulled.
Awesome. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share the deal page with you. And if you wouldn't mind just kind of walking through some of the key pieces of what's actually included in this. I know we kind of touched on it in the video.
Let's go over it again.
Cool.
All right. So when we talk about unlimited use of all the products, Startups.com and our education, our community, again, I want to emphasize it's not just what we have now, it's the other stuff we launch in the future. So if we buy another platform or product, et cetera, we're going to ensure that gets included as part of the package. The only things that we can't include historically are things that involve us having to pay other people to use. For example, we've got a huge business called Zirtual.com, which are virtual assistants, and it's awesome. But we pay virtual assistants to actually be part of that product, so obviously that's not unlimited. But anything that's SaaS, anything that's content, we always want to be able to provide that as part of your subscription. And in this case, you're getting a lifetime purchase of it, so we want to make sure that you get it forever. We think it's an awesome deal. Yeah. On the 600 masterclasses, the full online courses, those are all high def, well-produced videos that we've done with really well-named people. I've mentioned folks like Neil Patel or Steve Blank. Incredible. Like if you could watch all those and absorb all that, there's just so much depth of content there. The 1,000 how-to guides, that's been curated over the past 6 years across all the smartest founders we could find. So helping with how to put together a pitch deck, how to put together a better pitch to investors, how to develop your culture over time. There's just so much content there. And we divide it all into categories. So there's specific themes that'll say this is around funding, this is around culture, this is around planning, et cetera. And you'll see just an ungodly amount of content sitting in all of those streams, which is awesome. So you've got biz plan access. And so as we talked about, that's the number one ranked product on Product Hunt, but also I think one of the top 10 all-time selling products on AppSumo. So it's a beloved product. It's awesome. A lot of people think, well, I don't want to go through the business planning process. That's fine. Use the tool just to be able to pick off things that you need a little bit more thought and structure around. Use it for your marketing plan. Use it for your finances. Don't think that you have to create, the old school 1950s 50-page business plan in order to use the product. That's really not the case. On Fundable, again, we always say there's been a ton of success on Fundable, over $500 million raised on Fundable, which is awesome. But be mindful, two things. One, it's intended for US-based businesses, not because we're trying to limit it, but because our US security laws are specific to US companies. The second is whenever you're raising money, it's a tough path. I don't want people to think that you hop on Fundable, you put a profile up, and all of a sudden money starts falling out of the ceiling. It just sort of doesn't work like that. You still have to go through a proper fundraise. You have to talk to investors. You have to be able to bring people into your deal, just like you would in any other fundraise. In LaunchRock, a lot of people are familiar with LaunchRock because, again, it's been around forever. It's a great company we acquired years ago. LaunchRock allows you to create a simple page that you create typically before your launch. So it's a coming soon page. So you start to build some demand before you launch, and then use all that collected demand, usually emails, etc., to promote on the day that you launch. It's something that all of us do. It's awesome. Works really well, and it's just super simple. The on-demand advice, we talked about clarity. We talked about the 20,000 advisors that are there. Whether you use it directly, in other words, you say, hey, I want to post questions, or you just sift through the questions. There's 17,000 questions. Chances are what you're looking for has been answered ad nauseum. So I'd really recommend you just spend a little bit of time seeing what's on there before you lean in. The next one is the Startup Therapy Podcast. I'll be honest, this is totally free. You can go onto our site, you can go onto startups.com/podcast and get that right now. We only put it on there because we're promoting our podcast and we think it's awesome. We've gotten so much feedback from folks. The Startup Therapy Podcast isn't really about building a startup. It's about the founder's journey. It's about what all of us go through personally day to day, from what it's like to be staring in the face of having to almost go through bankruptcy in the company, to how to tell your spouse about how crazy this is, to sometimes just getting your head right, feeling like a total fraud in this business, and what you can do to kind of get through that. So we go in through all kinds of detail on all of these issues. So again, whether or not you're subscribing or not, I'd really ask that you take a look at what we got on Startup Therapy. For the benefits, now that's something new, and a couple of those are listed below. So I'm going to kind of wrap all these together. That just launched about 3 or 4 months ago. So for folks that have already bought the product in the past through AppSumo or whatever, or if you're already a customer, you have that. Again, you get grandfathered into everything that gets added in the future. Within that, the most popular one, of course, has been the Amazon credit because it's so large. But there are about, if I recall, about 20 to 25 different deals on there, and we're continuing to add more. We really wanted to see how many activations we got once we launched the deals platform, and we're getting a ton. I think we had 50 people yesterday sign up for AWS alone. So I can't do the math. It's $25,000, $25,000. I don't know. Anyway, it's a lot of money that we gave away yesterday in the form of Amazon credits. And so each of the credits are typically redeemed through the vendor. So for example, the 20 to 50% off HubSpot, you apply, HubSpot reviews your application, and then they give you the discount. That's to make sure that the people that are coming through don't already have the service. Again, it's a new activation, or that they're not violating any other terms of service that they may have, which usually is the case, but it's a check. All of the other credits that are on there are typically pretty straightforward. It's a coupon code or typically a landing page that you go to sign up to go through the process. So pretty straightforward on all the other deals.
Awesome. I'm sure Sumolings are used to that with AppSumo as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so last question before we sign off. What is on the roadmap for you guys, or what are you most excited about that you're working on at startups.com?
A lot of what we're focused on going into next year is starting to bring the community itself together. I mentioned we've got 1.2 million startups on the platform. That's a ton of people, but there aren't a lot of great ways for them to talk to each other. We've got it through Clarity if they're an expert, which is cool, but it's only 20,000 experts, which is a lot, but it doesn't cover 1.2 million. We've opened up our discussion forums on startups.com where people can start asking questions, and we're getting really good responses there. But more and more of the roadmap is going to allow you to start to connect to other founders and experts on the site in a more deliberate manner. So you can really start to build your network as well. And also so people aren't feeling like they're so isolated.
Super cool. That's great. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. And Sumolings, thank you for joining as well. Again, startups.com is on AppSumo right now. You can pick up all of that stuff that we just went over, just $49 for lifetime access. It's a great deal. Again, like Will mentioned, some of the tools in here have been the best-selling deals of all time on AppSumo. It's a great product. This isn't the first time we've run it. People have loved it every time we have. Again, it's all backed by the AppSumo 60-day guarantee. So feel free to get plugged in, check it out, see what the community's like, all of the information, see how it can help you build your best startup. And yeah, Will, thank you so much for taking the time. If you have any last things that you want to say before you sign off.
Yeah, just one thing. And you saw this in all of the Q&A. I'm not hard to get a hold of. You can find me at will@startups.com. Will with one L, Will with two L's, doesn't matter. And if you're stuck, just email me. We're not this big nameless, faceless organization. All of us are dead set on helping founders. And so whether I can help you or I can point you in the direction of somebody on the platform that can help you, or if you have a technical challenge, if you email me on a Sunday, you're going to get a response, much to the chagrin of my wife. But regardless, just know that we're here to help you in any capacity. So when you become part of startups.com, you become part of our family, and we're here to help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was great. Super cool webinar. I appreciate you guys hopping on Friday morning.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. See ya.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.